Hey everybody, happy Mentor Monday. Hope you guys are well. Let me know if you can hear me okay. It is week 10 of, I think 10, right, of social distancing here in South Carolina. So I do hope that all of you are safe and well at home and still healthy and able to stay distant but stay engaged. So this is our weekly SE Codes Mentor Monday, where we bring together anyone who is learning to code or interested in learning to code together with some of our professional mentors who live and work as developers across the state. And we have a special guest today with us. So before I introduce him, let me just remind you guys that it is our intent to be here mostly to answer your questions. So anything that you are learning about, that you have questions about, as you learn a little bit more about our guest, if you have questions for him about just his story and his journey, don't forget to just head over to the little chat box and add those questions and we will get those answered. So we're really excited that you all are here. Great to see many of you who come and meet with us every Monday. Let me introduce to you one of our wonderful mentors, Caleb McQuaid. I'll bring him in here. Caleb is one of our prolific mentors who has taught a bunch of different classes. He has and
How's everyone doing? Sorry.
No, I muted us for 1 second, so I think we're better now. But Caleb has an awesome story to share, and you may have heard a little bit of his story. We've done an interview before that is up on our YouTube channel, but Caleb has not been with us live yet. So I definitely wanted y'all to have a chance to really meet Caleb live in person, not really in person, but on screen, and ask him some questions if you'd like. So Caleb, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you. And you are coming to us from Greenville now.
Yes.
Which is only interesting because you used to come to us from Charleston. So big move happened.
Yes, ma'am. Big move late April during the quarantine and lockdown and everything. So just made it that much more exciting because moving isn't already exciting enough. So just had to throw in some extra spice there.
That's right. I love it. Well, welcome back to Greenville, Caleb. And I know that your story is very cool, very interesting. So I'd love to kind of start with that and maybe have you start with sort of your educational journey, where you started after, going through just kind of high school and everything, how you kind of got interested in software development, and just take us through kind of the journey that you've been through.
Sure. So I graduated high school in 2011 and went to college and got a degree in business administration with an emphasis in finance. But I didn't get an accounting major, didn't get any kind of certified financial planner license or anything like that. So I was very well equipped to be a financial assistant to a CPA or a CFO or something like that. So I did that for, I think, about 3 years after college. I graduated in 2015. And I worked through college as a financial assistant. But, that could only take me so far. And I needed a job with benefits, a job that would be able to support me and my family as we were growing. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to have to go back to school either for more schooling in the finance area, or I can go back to school for something else that has started to pique my interest. And it's starting about 2016 or so, I started really getting interested in programming. So I started with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, a lot of front end languages, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I was teaching myself, and there are a lot of advantages to that, and there are also a lot of disadvantages. And I found out very quickly that I learn best in a structured environment, with requirements and due dates and things like that. So it was very difficult for me, starting out, to force myself to continue learning. I would get really good about it for 3, 4, up to 8 weeks maybe. And I would be really into stuff, and then I would fall off the wagon for several months. Um, and that would always kind of put me back towards the beginning of my journey, because I wasn't in it constantly and I wasn't immersing myself in it. Um, SC Codes launched in its original version in, I believe, 2017 and 2016, something like that. And they were doing a cohort style learning process where we would meet once a week in Greenville, and we would go through the free code camp curriculum, which, if you're looking for curriculums, SE Codes is a great place to get started. And once you finish all of those, I would highly recommend free code camp. That takes you through the front end process, and then I believe they have modules for some back end as well. But we went through the JavaScript portion of Free Code Camp when we started SE Codes. So I've been where you are. You, the students that are trying to learn and get started and get the ball rolling on your tech career. I went through that free cohort. I loved it. But I was still struggling with learning on my own. And programming for me I've really found that if I'm not working on it on a daily basis, like at a job, I really struggle with continued learning. In 2018, I looked into Carolina Code School, which is a immersive 13-week program in Greenville, South Carolina. And I took the plunge, quit my job, and decided to go headfirst into this tech thing. So I graduated in November of 2018. In January, I was offered a position at Booz Allen Hamilton down in Charleston, South Carolina. And they're a humongous company. I think they have 26,000 employees worldwide. There were 400, I believe, down in Charleston. And a bit of background on myself, I have deep, deep roots in Greenville. All of my wife and I's family are here. We bought a house here. So that move to Charleston was a big deal for us. And it was exciting and also terrifying at the same time. And we got down there. I really enjoyed it. My wife, maybe not as much, but so I got a year of experience under my belt, and I decided to start thinking, like, okay, what are my next steps? Like, typically, I've heard that 2 to 3 years of experience will get you to a place where you can pretty much apply to most jobs and feel pretty confident that you're qualified for those jobs. So I thought, well, jumping the gun a little bit on this, but we'll see what happens. And I was able to connect with an awesome company out of Florida called Spatial Networks, and was able to switch positions to start working for them beginning of March of this year. So that has allowed us to move back to Greenville. Even though they're based in Florida, they have a lot of employees that work remotely. And I know that's a huge perk for tech-related jobs. And I can attest that it is awesome. And there are also some cons to it as well, if you're a very social person. But yeah, so that's where I am today on a daily basis. You will find me trying to fix some bugs after I've created them. I write mostly in Ruby on Rails um, at this position. We also have some React, which is a JavaScript library on our front end. So yeah, it's taken me 4 or 5 years now to get to the point where I'm at. A lot of hard work, but I was where all of you guys were at some point in time.
Well, thank you for sharing that story, Caleb. And a couple of things that I think are really neat about your story. One is just to see kind of the step-by-step trajectory that you decided to take with your career. Kind of inching in at first, learning on your own as you were still working in a different industry, different job, coming to this realization that you wanted to do this full time, and then kind of really making that leap to trust yourself and jump in. And then how quickly, 2 years ago, you hadn't even started. I think 2 years ago or so, you were probably just finishing up that first SE Codes cohort, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something
Yes.
close to that. And here you are 2 years later in your now second position as a professional developer, which is pretty amazing. So I can talk all day long about how this industry can give you opportunities to really grow quickly. But it's just cool to hear that from somebody who's really been through it. So thank you for sharing that, Caleb.
Absolutely.
The other part of your story, which I love, is our timing with SE Codes is similar to Caleb's timing with his own learning journey, but then also after you moved to Charleston, we were opening up our partnership in Charleston to begin hosting some cohorts with the Charleston County Public Library, which is awesome. And Caleb was the first mentor to really raise your hand and say, hey, I got a lot out of this when I did it up in Greenville, and I want to help others. So many of our students know you from learning from you in person in Charleston, which is super awesome.
I really enjoyed my time mentoring down there. It's one of the things that I definitely miss, along with being able to meet in a group at this point in time.
Yeah.
But one thing that I really appreciated during my learning journey was that there were so many other people that didn't know me, and some friends as well, that took time out of their busy schedules to pass on their knowledge to a beginner like me. And I always thought that I had the stupidest questions for them, but never once did I get a strange look from somebody or a wow, that's a dumb question. And it was huge for me to have other people pour into me, and give me the ability to continue learning. So I kind of made an agreement with myself that I would continue giving back once I had gotten to a place where I am able to. Still have a lot to learn, still have a lot of people pouring into me, but yeah, this is a great way to be able to give back.
Well, we are just, so grateful that you were willing to do that. And we have a couple of awesome mentors in Charleston. And really I think through mentorship, you got to meet some other programmers outside of your job in Charleston, which is kind of cool. So we're really grateful for that. I know that a lot of us do wish that we could get back to meeting in person soon, hopefully. But in the meantime, Caleb is really here to share that story with you and to answer your questions, talk with y'all about what it is that you're learning and anything that might be helpful. So as you're watching tonight, don't be shy about asking those questions over in the comments. and we'll get those answered. As some of you know, if you've been with us before, we have a teeny tiny delay. So right when you answer your question, if we haven't jumped on it, know that we will get to it. So thank you guys for that. And you did get a comment from Scott. Hi, Scott. Who just said, I bet you and your wife had lots of discussions about quitting your job and moving to Charleston, selling your home, all these things. So I think that's a good observation.
Absolutely. I can attest that we had several conversations. And honestly, one of the biggest reasons for quitting, there were several reasons, but I was turning 26, which is when you get off your parents' life insurance or your health insurance, everything like that. And I needed a job that had benefits, which is very common in the tech industry. My wife loves children, and in our family planning journey, we're like, okay, well, my wife would like to stay home with the kids, so I need to have a job that will allow her to do that. And it's a difficult skill to learn, software development, but in return, you get paid decently for that. So I really felt like it was a good fit all around.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the tech that you have learned and sort of, I know that you are the first to admit that you're still relatively new in the industry. But a lot of the questions that we often get are around kind of where should I get started? Which programming languages should I learn first? What are some of your thoughts on that?
Sure. There is I would say, typical roadmap for how people start to learn programming. And it's the roadmap that I took. You start with HTML and CSS, which are kind of the bones and the skin of a website. That's what you're going to see when you go to a website. And those are those can be challenging languages, especially starting off. But once you start working in a lot of the other logic-based languages, you'll find that HTML and CSS will be the easy parts after a couple of years, or hopefully they should be the easy parts. But at the same time, everyone learns differently, and other people will think that CSS is the toughest thing that they ever have come across, and they'll find that their back-end programming language is the easiest thing they've ever done. So everyone takes a slightly different path, but what I did was I learned HTML and CSS, which will give you an appearance of a website. And then you learn JavaScript, which is kind of the first logic-based language that a lot of people dive into. And if you haven't watched Alex's video from last week about front end versus back end, I would really recommend that video. He goes into a lot of depth and helps with your understanding. So JavaScript is mostly on the front end. It can be used on the back end as well, and that's where you get into your servers and your databases and all that good stuff, all that good logic. And that's JavaScript on the back end would be considered Node or Node.js. So my journey was HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And then I learned my first back-end programming language at the boot camp, which was Ruby and Ruby on Rails. And I love Ruby and Ruby on Rails. A lot of people will say that it's kind of dying out in popularity. There are a lot of huge companies that still use it, Airbnb, Shopify. A lot of those companies, their platform is built on Ruby on Rails still. So it's not dead yet. But I would say a lot of people, when they start to go towards the back-end programming languages, would recommend Python at this point in time. Python has a lot of qualities that lend itself to machine learning, artificial intelligence, things that we will probably be seeing much more of in the coming years. Yeah, so if I were to tell someone right now, here's your roadmap, go HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then Python for your backend language. Once you kind of have a small grasp on those things, start building some projects, start building stuff that you can put on a resume, you can hand in to a recruiter and say, hey, sign me up for a job somewhere because I know what I'm doing, or I can hopefully figure it out.
That's such good info. Thank you. First, let me say hi, Lisa, who says hello to you from Charleston County Public Library and Women in Tech. Thanks for being here,
Lisa?
Lisa. And you guys may have to ignore my 3-year-old in the background. And then Hector is, he's currently learning at ECPI, and he had a question just asking sort of when it comes to programming, is there something that if you could go back and do, what would it be? I'm thinking, Hector, that you mean something differently than what you did. Is there anything you maybe would change about the path that you've been on so far?
If I were to change anything, I probably would have gotten into programming sooner. This is not necessarily the case, but in every situation, but a lot of the best programmers I know have been doing it since high school or junior high. Just playing around with things in the browser, building small, just dumb little apps. And they just keep building on that skill. And obviously the more years you put into something, the better at it you will become. So I kind of wish that I had dove into it sooner. And I think there's some saying somewhere where it's like the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago, and the second best time is today. So would really recommend diving in as soon as possible if you are interested in it, or think that this might be something that you would be interested in.
So with SC Codes, when you became a mentor in Charleston, you helped to lead one of our very first cohorts of students kind of going through the platform that we have today. And you led students through the front-end basics class, correct?
Yes, I did.
So tell us a little bit about that experience just from your point of view, and what were some of the things that students enjoyed about that? What were some of the tough parts about going through that particular course?
Something that I enjoyed about it was I was able to give back. Personally, I was able to see how far I had come, because I was able to see, like, I understand this well enough now that I can teach it to somebody else. It was definitely a learning experience for me because I had to really solidify some ideas that were just a little bit nebulous in my mind, because I had to explain them to somebody else. So if you're struggling to see progress, if you're struggling to fully understand some concepts, tell it to a friend or a spouse or significant other, and just say, like, hey, can I explain this to you? To let me know, like, if you understand it, and that will kind of reveal to you, like, okay, I don't understand this part of this element. Things that were difficult about it. I have no teaching experience whatsoever, so I don't know. Sorry, my lovely wife, everyone. So having no teaching experience, that was a huge hurdle for me, to have to overcome and, make sure that these students are understanding and make sure that, I'm doing the best that I can to communicate these thoughts and ideas. Some people got it right off the bat, and I was like, this is awesome, this is great. And there were others that really struggled. But just making sure that nobody was left behind, making sure that everyone had like that base layer, that base foundation to build off of was really important for me. And I hope that we achieved that for most of the students.
Awesome. Well, in our, intention was and still is that in many of the locations where we have our partnerships across the state, that we will be able to offer multiple cohorts for students to go through. For many people like you, Caleb, who know that having that accountability, having that, in-person, face-to-face experience is a really important part of that learning and that journey. So I see it as really a good fit for people who are kind of where you were a couple years ago and figuring out, hey, I think that this is the way I want to go. Maybe they're not quite ready to take the full plunge, but they are ready to be serious about learning to code. That has always been really our intention, is to make it as easy as possible, remove as many barriers as possible for folks in South Carolina who want to learn to code, because it can be intimidating. It can often seem like it requires way more understanding of technology. Sometimes people think you need to be really great at math or science, or maybe that you have loved video games or taking apart computers since you were 8. And that's not true, right? Some people have been doing that stuff for their whole lives, but not everybody has. And it's not, a requirement to get into tech or into programming. So that is certainly where we will continue to go. We are actually in this sort of time of not being able to meet in person. We are looking into figuring out some virtual cohorts. So that should be pretty exciting. And we'll be able to have mentors really walk through these courses with students, very similarly to what you did in Charleston, but online. So more to look forward to. Thank you, Lisa, she's being very complimentary of you, Caleb, as a leader and a mentor. Also saying that your recommendation about making sure that you've joined our Slack channel is a really great recommendation. So a great way to stay connected in between these times, and really any time. I think we've mentioned that on every call. And Lisa also said, Caleb, you got your feet wet, and I highly commend you for jumping in and being supportive of others. So thank you, Lisa. Hector came back in and is just enforcing what you were saying about talking through, what you're working through with somebody else. Yes, that is something that we can do in our Slack channels too. There's always the Ask a Mentor channel if you're looking for mentor help, or if you're in a specific module on the SC Codes platform, like JavaScript concepts, and you're stuck on a particular step in one of those courses, there's actually a Slack channel for each specific course where you can go in and talk to people who are working on that same course. So totally, the tools are there to help you. Our mentors are here to help you, just like Caleb has always done, either in person or online. So great reminders, you guys. Thank you so much for all of that great feedback. Everyone is grateful for you and all of our mentors, Caleb, for giving back, giving your time. So we really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Happy to do it.
Yeah. So it's about right after 7:30 now, and For those of you who are here with us, if you do have any questions for Caleb, go ahead and submit those now. Otherwise, we'll wrap up here in just a few minutes. But we are both here, happy to answer any questions you have about SC codes, about this program, about really any of the activity going on in our state, about coding, and anything around programming. All of it we're an open book here for you guys. So if you do have any questions, throw those in there. And again, we may have a couple second delay, but while we wait on any last questions, Caleb, I'm interested to hear kind of what are you excited about with your new position? How does it differ a little bit from what you did in your first position as a software developer, and kind of where you see your career going from here?
Sure. In the cohort that I went to, we learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and Ruby on Rails. The first job that I took, I was actually writing in Java, which sounds similar to JavaScript, but it is nowhere near close, completely different. But that was something that I didn't have any experience in. I was just going in completely new to it. And Booz Allen and my coworkers were great getting me up to speed. But I am able in this new position to write in Ruby on Rails, which is the language I've fallen in love with. So that's fun to get to do. And then we're also writing in React, which is kind of the new fancy thing in JavaScript land. So really enjoying working with both of those technologies, working from home, and being able to have that flexibility is a big perk. As far as my career trajectory, I don't know. I'm very happy here at Spatial Networks, and it's all my coworkers are a joy to work with. Everyone's very helpful and very friendly. So yeah, for the foreseeable future, I will be a software engineer at Spatial Networks. But yeah, that's about all I got on that front.
That's awesome. If you had a ton of free time and you were going to go learn a new programming language, which one would you go learn?
I think I would go learn Python. I really like the idea of building something that can kind of think for itself a little bit and make decisions based on data it receives. So that kind of fascinates me on the back end. On the front end, everyone's talking about TypeScript these days, which is like it's even newer, the newer thing than React. So maybe diving into that as well. Those would be my two.
That sounds exciting. Hector Santiago, he's in Colombia. Hi again, Hector. Wants to know how he can support you and SC Codes.
I would say getting involved as much as possible. If you're a student, get involved in local cohorts as they pop up. Get involved with the Slack channel, especially. The more people that get involved and buy into, helping one another and supporting one another, the more this community will grow and the more you will get help from other people. I can guarantee you, if you have a question about something, probably 4 or 5 other people have a question about it and are not interested in posting it on Slack. So the more people we get asking questions and, or just posting like, hey, here's what I'm working on. Here's a project that I'm trying to build. The more of that we get, I think the more this community will just grow and grow. yeah, students, the mentors are here for you. We're here to answer questions. I love answering questions if I know the answer. Um, those would be the big ways for me to support the community.
Awesome. And thank you, Hector, for asking that. I totally agree. Scott is looking into CSS and kind of the description of what CSS is, cascading style sheets, which that's always a fun question to ask programmers if they remember what CSS stands for. Is a style sheet language used for describing the presentation of a document written in a markup language like HTML. Scott is asking, what does this do or look like? And Scott, what I will actually say to that, and Caleb, you're welcome to jump in on that, but is we're actually looking at doing a couple of our live Q&As going into a couple of the languages to kind of do, share our screens and show a little bit what that kind of stuff does look like. So if that's something you're interested in, it's good to know, and we will definitely plan to show a little bit more about HTML and CSS. Anything specific to add to that, Caleb?
From a quick 5,000 foot view of it, if you've ever opened up a website and everything's Times New Romans and it looks like it was built in the 90s and like everything's on the left side of the page, and you're like, wow, this looks awful, like somebody needs to redo their website or something like that, that is a page that is just HTML. The CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and that is the stuff that makes the website look nice and appealing to the eye. So that's that's how Google gets, like, the big Google logo on the middle of the page, right above the text bar. That's how Facebook gets their shapes, sizes, those types of things. That's what you will find in Cascading Style Sheets.
Awesome. I do think it will be interesting and helpful for some of you who are learning, whether you're learning your very first language or whether you've already been doing this for a while and you're learning a new language. I think it will be helpful for us to do a few more of the kind of more instructional kind of Q&A sessions where we might actually go through some of the steps of one of the modules on SC codes together, just to kind of make sure that you guys know what it looks like and what it feels like to go through that and explain a little bit more about it. So it's only a little bit difficult to do that because we're not currently showing our screens, and I'm not currently writing CSS myself. You guys know I'm not a programmer, but we'll be prepared with something like that and be prepared in the next couple of weeks to show you guys a little bit more. So thank you for that. Lisa's asking a little bit about just sort of expansion of SD codes, and we know, Lisa, that you do care a lot about aerospace and lots of industries there. I will touch on how we're expanding. As you all know, we have a handful of modules right now on the site. Java was actually our newest that we added a couple months ago, a little quick and fairly easy Java concepts course. We are always adding new curriculum, and so if there are things that either employers or our learners are telling us that they are interested in, we have a running list of additional curriculum that we're working on adding. But almost more importantly, we are always expanding kind of our network and our communities that we are part of. There are, a lot of great programmers and mentors who live in Greenville and Columbia and Charleston. And there are a ton of people in all three of those places who need access to how to even kind of get started and get in and meet some of those folks and understand. But there are a ton of other communities across our state where there might not be, a lot of teachers who are teaching anything about coding as students are growing up, and there may not be a ton of extracurricular opportunities for folks to go and learn. So that's, really one of our goals is to make sure that for people who live in places that maybe don't have a huge community of programmers, that we bring people together in communities like that. So I love that we have partnerships already in places like Florence and Myrtle Beach, Barnwell. We've got our newest in Rock Hill, which we did not even get a chance to meet before quarantine started. But really, expansion of SE Codes looks like expanding curriculum, but it also looks like expanding kind of our footprint in the communities that we're trying to reach, which is awesome. Calvin, one day, Calvin's here. Hi. One day, maybe I will write some code, and I will let you know.
Weird.
Now my 3-year-old is in here turning the lights off, so I think we should probably wrap this up. But if you guys have any last minute questions, throw those in here. Of course, as you know, we are always over in Slack, so jump over there if we don't get to your question tonight. And Caleb, anything we didn't touch on that you want to make sure you mentioned tonight?
I think we've hit the highlights here. Feel free to reach out to me on Slack. I think my username is just Caleb McQuaid. Reach out to the Ask a Mentor channel. Lots of smart people on there. Always willing. And happy learning.
Happy learning, you guys. Thank you so much for being here, and we will be back. Can you wave hi?
Hi.
We will be back. You guys keep up the great work, and we'll see you on Slack, okay?
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.